Kevin McCullough, AFA Today. Glad you're with us. 888-589-8840. Certain degree of justice occurs when we see an evildoer get it. And yet, in the grand scheme of things, there sometimes is a bit of confusion that sets in. And the story of this Texas rancher that knocked a man unconscious who was assaulting his daughter seems to be one that we all take satisfaction. It's just. We feel like there's justice that has been performed here. And we go to a different place. If this man had lived, been arrested, tried, found guilty of child sexual assault, and then somebody comes forward and says, we think we should put him to death, there would be pushback and arguments on cable television, and people would say, no, this is not worthy of the death penalty. And the death penalty is immoral for all these reasons. And you call yourself a Christian, but you say that you're for the death penalty, et cetera, et cetera. This level of reaction would occur, and the only difference would be whether he had survived the being knocked unconscious by the dad and arrested and tried versus dying of his injuries. Why is that? What's the difference between convicting the man and putting him to death in the court of law, through the court of law, versus the man saving his daughter's life in the field? It seems to me that what we have here is a dichotomy in how we think and kind of a separation in our processing of what actual justice is. And I'm not sure that we are a country that desires justice. 888-589-8840. I'm curious as to what you think. 888-589-8840. Let's talk to Lynn calling from Pennsylvania. Lynn, welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're with us. Lynn, are you there? All right, Lynn, you're not there, so we're going to move on. Let's go to Warren calling from Texas. Hi, Warren. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, I just wanted to compare this kind of with a case that happened years ago in Mississippi where I live. There was a family that had hired a babysitter. Babysitter was caught on camera and everything, shaking this child to the point where it had convulsions. I guess the father came in, beat the babysitter to death. They had this on camera. He got sentenced to prison for taking his law into his own hands. Now, you tell me what it is between this illegal alien, supposedly, raping a 5-year-old and a teenager, beating and shaking a baby. Assault is assault, whether sexual or not. I think the man got really, railroaded because he took the law into his own hands. He killed the babysitter.
So what's your question?
What's the difference? This man, whether he got beat to death by this gentleman, I'm agreeing with that because that's an assault. But the man that came in and saw the babysitter shaking the baby, well, the judge ruled that the man took the law into his own hands, and the father got sentenced to 20 years in prison. And I don't know what became of everything, but he killed the babysitter.
Did the baby live?
The baby lived, but I guess psychological problems because the baby went into convulsions.
Sure.
Now, the man, the father, got sentenced to 20 years in prison for killing the babysitter.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a difficult case, Warren, and I don't know that I don't know that they're comparable or not. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that they would have to look at and see what kind of history this person had, et cetera, if she'd ever done that before, and you know, I don't know. Would need a lot more information, I guess, on the situation. But this the situation in Texas, and I don't really want to compare it to all these other possibilities. What I'd like to know is, in that one example, between him dying of his injuries there at the time, when the assault has just taken place, the father catches him. They're obviously he's obviously in the act, based on how he's dressed, etc. Knocking him out, knocking him unconscious, and eventually dying of those wounds, versus being arrested, taken to prison, put on trial, housed, fed, taken care of for however many years until the appeals process works its way out, and then being put up on the death penalty, but being put to death through the death penalty. Many would say, particularly in the arena of faith, that this is unacceptable. That the death penalty is unacceptable. There are a lot of Christians that argue that the death penalty is unacceptable under any circumstances. I don't understand why, when it just makes sense, and you know justice when you understand it. Like the father taking this man's life, that grand jury didn't do a bad job in not indicting him. The sheriff didn't do the wrong thing in not arresting him. It's easy to understand that the salvation of that girl, of that daughter, was paramount, and so it drove the actions of the father to do what was necessary in order to ensure that occurred. However, just a couple of things changing, it goes to court, and people say, "Oh, no, this is a terrible thing. Who are we to judge? How could we possibly sit in the place of God and determine whether or not this man lives or dies?" It's an interesting dilemma that is faced on a regular basis. Let's talk to Ray, also from Texas. Ray, welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're with us.
Good to speak with you, Kevin. I listen to you all the time.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a first-time caller.
Thank you.
I'm very sensitive to this story about this young child that was raped on this farm. I've lived in Texas all my life. My mother and father, who are now deceased, and I'm a senior, they conveyed stories to me about how this situation had occurred in the history of our state here for country people, being in isolated areas, like on ranches or farms. And they take them out and they'd usually hang them. One form of death is just as good as another. But I'd like to bring the scenario a little bit closer into perspective. I read in a news media that a lot of the young Mexican girls in Mexico that have taken jobs to American-type companies that may or may not be run by American or Mexican officials, but anyway, they're thriving factories and companies in Mexico. And these young girls don't live close, and a lot of them have to walk. There's no bus transportation to these factories, and they get raped, and maybe some of them even get killed in the desert area of Mexico going to work. So I suspect that a lot of these people that come across the borders of our southern states, they probably have backgrounds of violent crimes. And you just don't do something like that and not have some sort of a questionable background. So that's all I have to say. I agree with just about everything you've said, and I'm sorry that we have so many bleeding heart liberals that we've done away with the death penalty in so many states, because, as you said moments ago, that I think that has a determining factor on how people are going to go ahead and commit a crime knowing that they're going to get away with it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate your kind words. Isn't that part of the rationale that Obama's making? That if we don't do anything, future bad guys won't be deterred? Because it's funny, people that oppose the death penalty say, well, if we try to argue that this is a deterrent to future violent crime, it won't work. Texas, state that Ray just called from, they've re-implemented the death penalty. It was gone for a short period of time, but it's been back in effect for a while. And they also a concealed carry state, one of the safest places you can walk around, honestly, because the unknown of swift justice, to some degree, encourages better behavior. It's odd how that happens. Violent crime went down the following year that concealed carry came back into effect. Murders and violent crimes of that nature went down the year following the reinstating of the death penalty. Consequences matter for the ones that are willing to at least think far enough in advance to consider them. Admittedly, that's fewer and fewer of the actual population anymore. 888-589-8840. Let's go to Dennis, who's calling from Mississippi. Dennis, you're next on AFA Today with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're here.
Did you say Dennis?
I did.
Okay. You kind of buzzed out there on me for just a second. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. If it had been my 5-year-old daughter, I don't know if they would have found pieces of him or not. But them, I just heard the other day that a 14-year-old girl had gotten raped. I believe they said it was in Colorado, but I'm not sure. But they gave the guy 60 days. And the 14-year-old
You were
girl
listening to this radio show. We discussed...
No, it wasn't you. I think it was... oh, God. Who's the one that's on after you?
Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher. I think I was listening to his show.
Okay, he may have discussed it, but we did discuss that. We did an entire show on that, and yes, there was a girl that was raped, and the judge gave the man 15 years and suspended 14 years and 11 months worth of the sentence.
And,
so he ended up getting 30 days.
Yeah, and that girl ended up killing herself.
Took her own life because of the depression associated with it, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know, this is one of the heinous crimes that I think there is, violating a child like that.
No, Jesus felt the same way, by the way. Jesus felt exactly the same way. People that argue that, I mean, he said it's better for you to have a millstone hung around your neck and dropped into the sea. Do you know how heavy millstones are? I just went to Israel in the spring, saw some old world millstones for myself, thousands of pounds. Jesus is indicating in that you mess with kids, you're messing with innocence. And God doesn't look smilingly on that. 888-589-8840. Royce in Arkansas, you're next with Kevin McCullough on AFA Today. Hi.
Hi. I'd like to make this short and sweet and to the point.
Sure.
I'm really tired of these bleeding heart liberals. The Bible tells me that there's two causes for capital punishment. One is premeditated murder. That's lying in wait. And also that it's eyewitnessed by 2 eyewitnesses, minimum. That's automatic death penalty. And they did public execution to make an example for all the rest of the populace. The other, number 2 reason for capital punishment is rape. And they don't give an age or reason or anything. Suppose this Mexican would have overpowered the father and slain him and his daughter and then ran away. Did anyone ever think of that? I mean, which was the better scenario? And he used, in other words, he could have been afraid for his life. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the situation. But I think what he did was very, very justified. And I think if we had more public executions, that people can see exactly what happens. If you do this crime or commit this offense, this can happen to you. Right now, it doesn't happen. Usually there's always a technical way to get out of it. And I think if they put the people to test and show them that there is punishment, there is accountability, and that's what we're lacking in this country today. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Royce. Appreciate the call and your comments. 888-589-8840. Real quickly, Brandy in Oklahoma, you may be our last caller on this. Go right ahead. You're on with Kevin McCullough.
I just have three things. One, I agree with he got what he deserved. Two, I agree with your very first caller. I don't think it was correct for you to make a snap judgment because of the location, geography, where he was, that he was an illegal. Because now most of your callers, when they call in, the first thing they say, oh, well, this illegal, they don't know that he was an illegal. There's crimes committed all over by white, black. And I just don't think it was right that you made that snap judgment. So everybody that listens to the show is now also just, oh, well, he was a Mexican. So
Brandy, I'm allowed to have my opinion and to prognosticate a guess. And my guess was that if it turns out that he's not, I'll come back and correct that. I'm not afraid of it was just my hunch, and that's what I said. It was only a hunch. I did not have any proof one way or the other, but I announced that by saying that it was a hunch. What was your third thing?
That was it, just the three. One, that I agreed with the other caller. I agreed with what he got, but I disagree with the fact that the snap judgment was made that he's an illegal, and now everybody's going to base the fact that he was an illegal because you see a man.
Not everybody will, but I appreciate the desire to have accuracy. I think that's always an important thing. Thank you, Brandy, for your call. Thank you for being with us. AFA Today every single day. If you've not checked out today's headlines, onenewsnow.com, and get up to speed on all things related to faith and family and the stories that you care about. Tonight, the Kevin McCullough Show with additional headlines of the day that you won't want to miss, including John McCain pulling out of Syria.
The views